Good evening and thanks for joining us. You're watching All 24 News World News program. Let's get started with the headlines. In Gaza, dozens killed, children among the dead, as hunger spreads and Hamas vows to fight on until statehood is achieved. Also in our news, no ports for genocide. Moroccans rally online and on the streets to block arms ships bound for the Zionist entity. Coming up as well, from reforms to results, Algeria climbs again as World Bank confirms upper middle income status. And later on in Eastern Europe, Ukrainian drone strikes kill 3 people. Russia seizes Donetsk village and Trump deploys nuclear subs. 4 reports coming right up. Welcome back to the program. At least 16 people were killed in fresh attacks across Gaza Strip, most of them displaced civilians. In the north, shelling near a school in Jabalia killed 2. Airstrikes in Zaytun, Shujaiya and To'am took 14 more lives. Down south, 6 died, including a woman, when tents were hit near Khan Yunis. In central Gaza, an airstrike wiped out a family of 5 in Az-Zawaida, with 1 more killed in a separate strike. Hospitals have confirmed the rising toll. In the same context, occupation forces opened fire on starving Palestinians waiting for food across Gaza on Thursday, killing 24 and wounding dozens. Medical teams confirmed 20 dead and over 90 hurt near 8 lines south of Wadi Gaza. 4 more were killed in Khan Yunis and Rafah. Hospitals already overwhelmed are struggling to treat the injured as famine tightens its grip on the Strip.
عمره 16 سنة أحمد فارة.
16-year-old Ahmed Farah was martyred while he was on his way to get flour from a sarib, from the death traps, the cold traps that they set up. The Zionists went to demonstrate in front of the American envoy to install the aid cells to deliver the aid as they politely claim. So Witkoff needs to come and see and witness what is happening to our children, to the hospitals and see the sick lying on the ground without beds or medicines or anesthesia or treatment and without finding anything to eat. To see the people dying of hunger. To see my little son, a child, my 3rd son whom Israel killed a month ago. I lost one and today he is my 3rd child.
Meanwhile, Gaza's health ministry says 7 more people have died from hunger in the past 24 hours, including a child. That brings the starvation death toll to 169, nearly 100 of them children. Doctors warn that entire families are now starving as the siege tightens and the food runs out across the Strip. For its part, UNICEF is sounding the alarm. It revealed that over 300,000 children in Gaza now face deadly malnutrition. Starvation deaths are rising fast, pushing past famine levels. On Friday, UNICEF's Ted Shaven said children are dying at an unprecedented pace, with 1 in 3 Gazans going days without food, as the occupation siege turns hunger into a weapon.
Over 18,000 children have been killed in Gaza since the beginning of the war. That's an average of 28 children a day, the size of a classroom gone. We now have 2 indicators that have exceeded the famine threshold. 1 in 3 people in Gaza are going days without food, and the malnutrition indicator has exceeded the famine threshold, with global acute malnutrition now at over 16.5%. Today, more than 320,000 young children are at risk of acute malnutrition.
On the same note, under constant bombardment and a crippling blockade, nearly 2 million Palestinians in Gaza are fighting to survive. As famine spreads, even 1 meal a day is out of reach for many. Zafar Jani has the full story.
Every morning, Abir and Fadi Sobh wake up in a tent in Gaza with the same question: how are we going to feed our 6 children today? Their options are heartbreakingly limited: a rundown charity kitchen offering a thin lentil soup, a desperate push through crowds, or as a last resort, begging. When all else fails, they simply don't eat, and that happens often.
I got injured in Zakim while trying to get a sack of flour. After that, my wife started going instead. If she brings something back, we eat. If not, we don't. Even water is hard to find. And with the fighting, getting aid is nearly impossible. The charity kitchens, there's barely anything. We go all day without food sometimes. The kids go to bed hungry, and I send them to look for plastic or wood just so we can make fire.
For Abir, the daily battle for survival in genocide-ravaged Gaza is both physical and emotional. With Fadi injured, she and their 3 oldest children have taken on the burden, searching for food and water, often coming back empty-handed.
As a mother, I use salty seawater to wash our clothes. I have no detergent, no soap, no milk. Sometimes I make lunches with water and put it in the bottle for my baby. That's all I have. My children fall asleep without eating. If I can beg a neighbor or send my son to try, I do. Sometimes when they keep asking me for food, I walk to the beach and sit alone. They're just kids. They want what any child wants. I can't give it to them. If this war continues, I swear I'll end my life. I just can't go on like this.
The Sobh family story is one among thousands. Families crushed under the weight of hunger and Zionist genocide in Gaza. Aid has nearly vanished, while humanitarian workers say the food crisis has hit catastrophic levels. Earlier this week, experts confirmed the worst-case scenario for famine is already happening in Gaza.
Turning to political developments, on Saturday, Hamas solemnly affirmed its unwavering commitment to armed resistance until the realization of an independent Palestinian state. In a statement, the movement asserted its inherent right to bear arms under international law, declaring its weapons a symbol of legitimate national resistance, recognized and upheld by established international conventions as long as the occupation endures.
Resistance and its weapons are a national and legal right as long as the occupation continues. This right is recognized by international charters and norms, and it cannot be relinquished except upon the full restoration of our national rights, foremost among them the establishment of an independent, fully sovereign Palestinian state with Al-Quds as its capital.
In another development, occupation forces shot and killed a Palestinian and wounded 8 others on Saturday in a violent raid on the Mahfouriya plain near Nablus. The Palestinian Red Crescent says troops opened fire as settlers stormed the area near Aqraba. Medics rushed to help the wounded as violence continues to surge across the occupied West Bank. As for the international reactions, former EU Foreign Policy Chief Joseph Borrell is calling out European leaders for their silence on Gaza. In a Guardian article, he accused them of enabling Israel's crimes through inaction, warning that failure to speak up makes them complicit. Borrell urged the EU to hold the occupation accountable or risk being seen as part of the atrocities.
Basically, the European market is open. It's 450 million people.
Those who fail to act to stop this genocide and these violations, despite having the means to do so, are complicit. The European Union has many tools at its disposal to significantly influence the Israeli government. It is Israel's largest trading partner, its main partner in investment and people-to-people exchange, and one of its key arms suppliers.
Echoing that outrage, tens of thousands marched across Europe on Saturday demanding an end to the Zionist war on Gaza and calling for urgent aid access. From Berlin to Oslo, protesters slammed their government's silence, denouncing complicity in the occupation's starvation tactics. Many held banners urging arms embargoes and trials for war crimes as Palestinians continue to die under bombs and famine. Elsewhere in North Africa, Tunisian rights groups held a sit-in outside the US Embassy on Saturday, chanting against normalization with the Zionist entity and demanding an end to Gaza's siege. The protest, led by the Tunisian network to confront normalization, voiced strong support for Palestinian resistance amid the ongoing genocide. Meanwhile, in Morocco, a parallel rally condemned the government's ties to the occupation, calling for a halt to arms shipments through Moroccan ports and denouncing the use of starvation as a weapon of war. Still with the growing wave of outrage, Moroccan activists launched a digital firestorm Friday night, urging authorities to ban military shipments from Docking at Tangier and other ports to halt the flow of weapons fueling the Zionist genocide in Gaza Strip. The Moroccan Front in support of Palestine and opposing normalization has announced a mass march in Tangier this Sunday under the slogan No Ports for Genocide. The movement rejects the use of Moroccan territory to arm the occupation, as new arms shipments are set to arrive at several ports across the country.
Following a series of shipments that went quietly unnoticed in recent months, on July 19, 2025, shipment was dispatched containing a container with the two crates designed for transporting parts of F-35 aircraft wings, manufactured by Lockheed Martin in the United States.
Shifting focus to Libya, the United Nations Support Mission, UNSMIL, has tied the formation of a unified government to the outcome of ongoing negotiations over a national roadmap. In a virtual dialogue with 239 Libyans, UN Special Representative Hannah Tete confirmed that the upcoming roadmap, set to be unveiled soon, will reflect both public sentiment and political consultations. She emphasized that elections remain the only legitimate path to restructuring Libya's institutions and ensuring accountability to the people.
We believe that the existence of a unified government is important. The formation of this government will be part of the roadmap negotiations. What we conclude will be based on public opinion through surveys and the results of other consultations. The way to change institutions is through elections. The goal is to move from the transitional stages to the election stage, which will produce a leadership with a popular mandate that bears responsibility for Libya's future and is accountable to the Libyans. There are parties that believe their interests will be severely harmed if the elections are held, and therefore their incentive will be to disrupt. This could jeopardize the process, so we must take these challenges into account and work to manage them effectively.
Turning to continental affairs, Algeria's ambassador to Ethiopia and EU representative Mohammed Khalid has outlined Algeria's priorities as it assumes the presidency of the African Union Peace and Security Council this August. Speaking after officially taking over the Council's leadership, Khalid said Algeria will focus on three key axes, with top priority given to assessing the threats and challenges to peace and security across the African continent.
I have the great honor and pleasure to present the program of work of the Algerian presidency of the Peace and Security Council, which has been structured so that the planned meetings cover three main areas. 1. Assessment of threats and challenges to peace and security on the continent. We will attempt to develop a matrix of these threats and the means to address them. 2. Review of crisis situations, including a field mission. 3. Consultating and briefing sessions between the Peace and Security Council and various organs and regional economic communities in Africa.
Building on that, Algeria's EU representative added that the country's August agenda will center on mediating Africa's crises through broad consultations with key peace stakeholders.
In conclusion, as you can see, this work will enable the Peace and Security Council to examine crisis situations in the continent and engage in consultations with several peace actors and formulate recommendations that will help advance the AU's peace and security agenda in accordance with the mandate of the Peace and Security Council, this important organ of the African Union, a pillar of the African Peace and Security Architecture, APSA, which works towards achieving the Africa we want, a peaceful and prosperous Africa.
On the economic front, Algeria's outlook is gaining momentum, with international institutions praising the country's recent performance, a boost that could mark a turning point for an economy long dependent on hydrocarbons. For more on this, here's Salman Nasib.
International institutions like the World Bank, IMF and UNCTAD have praised Algeria's economic performance, recognizing the country's structural reforms aimed at reducing its dependence on hydrocarbons and building a more diversified and inclusive economy.
Les derniers rapports qui ont été émis sur l'économie de l'Algérie par des institutions.
The latest reports issued on Algeria's economy by international institutions such as the IMF or the World Bank have shown a strong increase in the country's GDP thanks to a greater diversification of its economy, in particular the revival of major structural projects, whether in the industrial sector or in areas with high technological value, demonstrates Algeria's determination to pursue sustainable growth that can be long-lasting and generate both jobs and added value.
The World Bank has, for the second year in a row, ranked Algeria in the upper middle income category, placing it among the top 10 African nations in this group. This reflects efforts to protect household purchasing power amid global inflation between 2022 and 2024.
Il y a une reconnaissance des efforts qui sont fournis par.
There is a recognition of the efforts made by Algeria to gradually move away from its dependence on hydrocarbons, as well as of the various reform packages that have enabled investment to grow in our country and have firmly established Algeria as the third largest economy on the continent.
The IMF highlighted Algeria's reforms to boost investment by improving the business climate, projecting short-term positive growth. With a target GDP of $400 billion by 2027, Algeria is also focusing on entrepreneurship and attracting foreign direct investment. UNCTAD confirmed progress with an 18% increase in FDI in 2024. Milestones are set for 2027 until 2030. Current indicators support Algeria's vision on becoming a regional economic leader and emerging market contender.
Turning to other topical developments, overnight attacks in Russia's Rostov, Penza and Samara regions left 3 people dead, including an elderly man in Samara, 800 kilometers from Ukraine, and a woman in Penza. Authorities confirmed 2 others were wounded as Kiev's long-range strikes deepened their reach into Russian territory. Meanwhile, on the battlefield, the Russian Defense Ministry announced Saturday that its forces had taken control of Alexandro Kalinovo in the Donetsk region, marking a new gain on Ukraine's eastern front. The advance was reported in the ministry's daily update on what Moscow refers to as its special military operation. In related international tensions, U.S. President Donald Trump announced Friday the deployment of 2 nuclear submarines near Russian waters, citing provocative nuclear rhetoric from former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev. The move comes after Medvedev emphasized Russia's long-standing nuclear capabilities, prompting a visible U.S. military response.
We had to do that. We just have to be careful. And a threat was made, and we didn't think it was appropriate, so I have to be very careful. So I do that on the basis of safety for our people. A threat was made by a former president of Russia, and we're going to protect our people.
In another story, Iran's foreign ministry criticized its dialogue with the European Troika as complex but strictly preliminary, with spokeswomen Fatima Mujarani telling Sputnik on Saturday that the exchanges remain informal. She stressed the talks involve only viewpoint exchanges, not substantive negotiations toward agreements. As climate threats intensify worldwide, the United Nations warns that the planet is fast approaching a dangerous tipping point. Urgent global action to avoid irreversible damage. The report by Yasin Rakti.
The world is on the brink of breaching the critical 1.5 degrees Celsius global warming threshold, a limit that could unleash irreversible environmental damage, according to George Moreira de Silva, Executive Director of the UN Office for Project Services, UNOPS. He stressed that surpassing this limit could expose 1.3 billion people to desertification or severe water stress, destabilize ice sheets, and escalate extreme weather events.
If we go towards 2.9 degrees rather than 1.5, we will get 1.3 billion people in the world that will live in places that became deserts or under significant water stress. We'll have massive destruction of ice sheets. We'll have massive destruction of the stability of the climate. We'll have proliferation of hurricanes and cyclones. So the 1.5 degree, I insist, is a physical limit. If we cross that limit, we'll still be in this planet, but the planet will be different in terms of well-being, in terms of quality of life, in terms of health, but we can still fix it.
Despite the alarming outlook, he highlighted global progress in renewable energy and electric mobility, noting that investment in clean technologies has surged worldwide. Solar, wind, and emerging solutions like green hydrogen are becoming increasingly viable, while electric vehicle adoption continues to rise across continents.
In the last decade, investment on renewable energy has doubled. Solar and wind is now the cheapest energy in the world. Cheapest, solar and wind. Electrical mobility have been doubling or tripling every year. It shows that the renewable energy or the electrical mobility is no longer a green agenda. It makes sense from an economic point of view. The number of jobs that can be created are massive through the green energy.
While advancing in green technologies is boosting jobs globally, communities around the world are already fleeing the consequences of delayed action. In recent months, floods swept across Africa, Pakistan, South Korea and Texas, killing hundreds and displacing thousands. Wildfires tore across the Mediterranean, South America and the United States, forcing mass evacuations and ravaging ecosystems. The UNOPS director remains optimistic about the job-creating potential of the green economy, emphasizing that the world cannot afford to wait any longer. The climate crisis is no longer a distant threat, it's already at our doorstep.
More international news stories in the News in Brief with Safian Kanturi now.
At least 15 civilians were shot dead by rapid support forces on Saturday while trying to flee the city of Al-Fasher in North Darfur, according to Sudan Tribune. Dozens of soldiers and civilians were killed in two coordinated militant attacks in southeastern Burkina Faso. Armed men raided a military unit in the village of Dargo, leading to heavy casualties on both sides. On the same day, a supply convoy between Dori and Gorom was ambushed, resulting in more deaths among troops and civilians. A Malian court has detained former Prime Minister Moussa Mara after charging him over a social media post in which he criticized the shrinking space for democracy under the country's military rule. The China-Russia Joint C-2025 military exercise commenced on Friday at a military port in Russia's Vladivostok, marking a display of growing defense ties, scheduled to be held from August 1st to 5th. The exercise is themed at jointly maintaining the security of strategic canals and responding to security threats in the Western Pacific. 5 children were killed and 13 others injured on Saturday when a mortar shell exploded in northwestern Pakistan. The incident occurred as a group of children playing in a mountainous area found the shell, which detonated as they began to handle it.
Finally tonight, a proud moment for Algerian sports. The national basketball team capped off a historic campaign by beating Egypt 78-70 in Saturday's final, sealing a perfect 6-0 sweep at the 26th Arab Nations Championship in Bahrain. Coach Ali Bouzian's squad dominated Tunisia, Qatar, the UAE, Kuwait, and the host Bahrain on their road to glory, clinching Algeria's second ever title and the first in 20 years. They finished unbeaten at the top of the standings with 12 points. That wraps up our news program for tonight. For more updates, you can always check our social media platforms. I'm Islam Sit signing off. Good night.